2020. As has become our custom, of late, I will read the virtual meeting statement first, and then we'll go on from there. I'm Daniel Drake, Chair of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Arthur Gasparo.
Here.
Jeanette Topham. Tony Buscarin.
Here.
Andrea Planzer.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tom Rafter, Airport
Here.
Manager. Noah Carberg, Assistant Airport Manager.
Here.
Katie Perales.
Here.
Lily Sylvia.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative when I call your name. Rich Lasden, Mcfarland Johnson, Inc.
Here.
Georgie Nugent, Mcfarland Johnson, Inc.
Here.
Jim Sokup, Weston Solutions, Inc.
Here.
Lisa Kammer, Weston Solutions, Inc. Thank you all for being with us. Melissa, are you here? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. She's here, okay. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the state of emergency in the Commonwealth resulting from the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment both after our PFAS discussion and at the end of the agenda in our usual fashion. For this meeting, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via the Zoom app and broadcasting on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. The meeting materials, all supporting materials have been provided to members of this body and are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. The ground rules of the business meeting are when we turn to, I'm sorry, this has got to be changed. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, let me cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with where there's public comment, after the members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. NCTV will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. It is important to note that once the chat feature is activated, members of the public will need to refresh their YouTube webpage in order to access the chat. The chair and our staff will do their best to address any questions or comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting shall be conducted by roll call vote. As previously noted, this meeting is being both audio and video recorded. I would like to ask if there are any comments or questions from the members of the commission on the agenda.
No.
Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. The first from July 16th is for the joint meeting of the board, the select board, the Board of Health, and the Airport Commission. The minutes from July 29th are for the public information session that the Airport Commission conducted with respect to the PFAS matter. And the minutes of August 11th, 2020 are for the regular meeting. Are there any comments or questions on that agenda? Oh, no, I'm sorry, on those minutes?
No.
Ms. Planzer?
Any comments on it, you said?
Mr. Buscarin? You have any
No
comments?
comment.
No.
Sorry, it's very hard to hear you, Mr. Buscarin.
You hear me now?
Ms. Topham?
No, I don't have any questions.
Sparrow?
No comments.
Is there a motion to, sorry to go through this again, but is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 16th, July 29th, and August 11th, 2020?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Mr. Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. I've entertained a motion to ratify the warrant of August 19th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Topham and Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is just to note that it was decided to give Mr. Walsh an opportunity to come before the commission to discuss his banishment from the airfield, Mr. Robert Walsh. It was on the agenda just to make note of the fact that he was afforded that opportunity, and he asked that his appearance be delayed until the October meeting. Mr. Rafter, would you please go through the pending leases and contracts?
Sure. The first, pending still is Southern Airways and the agreement with Wannacomet Water. We've sent the agreement to Wannacomet. Town Council is reviewing that, and that is for the water main that will be discussed later. Next is with CHA Consulting for $75,000. That's the project manager, owner's project manager for the fuel farm upgrade. And we have a contract with Archetype SC for $51,300. It's A2 analytics development and support. It's to put various sensors throughout the terminal to allow us to do data collection so that we can see the number of occupants either in a designated area, whether it be the hold room, the tent, the restaurant, and so on, so that we can identify our capacity issues as well as do social distancing. Next is a contract with Mcfarland Johnson for $47,710. That's task order PN03. That's for the airport gas property investigation. It was pulled out of a prior, the task order was submitted before, that was pulled out and separated. There's a amendment that was part of the handout for the task order 1, PN01. And in there, that's basically qualifying what has been done to date, some of the things that they've done beyond the initial task and scope, and some that are coming in under, and they're working on quantifying that with a cost. So I just wanted to get that on the radar screen. Next, we have another contract with Mcfarland for $525,743. That's task order PN04. That is for additional sampling and potential poet installation on Nobodere Way. It's Nobodere Way and Evergreen Avenue. There were some language changes, and I believe a handout went out late this afternoon to identify that there are some residents in this area that are have town water, and so they're going to certainly work on that. They're not going to be sampling wells there, obviously, but where there are wells near town water, if they come back with a above, I guess it would be 20 or whatever, we're going to encourage them to go on to town water, but we will be providing bottled water or whatever. And I'll leave that up to the professionals to address this in the presentation later. But that task order is for that study area, if you will, or study group. Next, we have another Mcfarland Johnson task order for $268,000. That's task order EN01, and that is for the water line extension, design, permitting, and bid documents. Then we have the next is for future consideration. That's the Plume Identification, another task order under the PFAS items.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rafter. I think I'm going to ask
I'm
if,
sorry, Dan, if I can, I'll
yes.
just give you a little bit of an update too, or
Well, let me tell you what I was going to suggest first, and
okay.
then see how you want to handle this. I was going to suggest we take the first three and then leave the last two with the contracts with Mcfarland Johnson until after we've done our PFAS discussion, so that hopefully the commissioners will have a better understanding of what's involved in each of these.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, and before that though, I'll just give you a quick brief synopsis of one of them.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would vote on all three, and then I'll talk
Okay.
about the one.
All right. I will, I'd like to hear a motion accepting the contract with CHA Consulting with Archetype SC and with Mcfarland Johnson Inc. for task order, I can't read it, sorry, PIN 49, PIN 09. Is it PIN 09?
PN03.
03, thank you, sorry about that.
2017.
For the airport gas property investigation. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Buscarin. Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Please remind me, Ms. Perales, that we have to take a vote on these other two after the discussion.
And just if I may, Dan, on the PN04, the Nobodere Way study area, and I will ask the consultants to correct me if I'm wrong. You'll probably hear it in the presentation, but my reading of it looks like they're assuming 10 POET systems and monitoring for up to 8 months, testing 22 wells and providing bottled water for 22 residents, as well as 7 access agreements. But again, they'll go over some of that in detail, I think, in the presentation. So we can move on the agenda and then come back to those.
Okay, well, we've got one other item on the agenda, which is the capital approval process home rule petition, the status of that, Mr. Rafter?
Yes, my understanding is it has been sent up to the state, but I want to verify that with the clerk. But I also received a call from Mr. Atherton, who is on the government study committee, provided him an update. He was not aware that the article had passed at annual town meeting. And I explained to him that, you know, the next steps, but also that we are going to be, if you will, front loading some of the capital requests, because without that home rule petition, we're still going to run into some issues with regard to coordinating the schedules for grant applications and the such.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing and hearing none. Let's get into the PFAS discussion. Who's going to make the presentation? Mr. Lasden or?
Yes, I and others will help you, will be helping me.
Great, thank you.
Katie, can you put the presentation up on the screen?
Sure, just give me 1 minute. Are you seeing, what are you guys seeing?
That you're sharing your screen.
Starting to share. There it is.
There we go.
Okay, and I did it correctly. That's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Okay. Let me know when to flip the slide.
Yeah, can you reduce it to fit on the size of the screen? Or is that, yeah.
I just can't see it, so I don't know what you're seeing. Oh, okay, I know what you mean now.
There you go. No, well,
Yeah,
Looks like you have some other things open, Katie.
you can, okay. You can see other things?
No, just
Okay.
a lot on the top there.
okay, that's fine. Katie, if you just flip to the next page.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. So, Mr. Chairman, what we've done is we put together a status update on each of the 3 areas. We've divided the areas of the airport into 3 areas: the Madigan Valley Road, properties to the west, and then Nobadir and Evergreen. And there's some discussion back and forth on where the division point is between West and Nobadir Way. And I don't know if that has to be sort of resolved at this point, but for convenient point, you'll see on a graphic coming up where we've divided those just for convenience. So to go through the list, Madigan Valley Road was where we first started the response action, and we've got 22 parcels total. 20 have been tested. We still have 1 unresponsive party. As we've talked many times, this is just a property owner that is uninterested in responding back to us. I know we've discussed many times on what the next steps are, but for now, we have 1 unresponsive party. And then we have the rest, we have 6 over 200. We've got 4 between 20 and 200, 7 below 200, 3 non-detects.
7 below 20, excuse me.
Yes, I'm sorry. 7 below 20, 3 non-detects. And then we had a discussion today. We have 6 poets that are installed, and we had a discussion today with legal counsel and Brian Turbett on how to move forward with the next series of poets through the waiver system. And we were able to resolve that today. So we should be, we're reaching out to the contractor that showed interest, and hopefully we will be able to get a contractor, at least the airport is issuing a letter of notice to proceed so that we can get that firm on board and start providing and installing these poet systems as soon as possible. 14 on bottled water. The follow-up continued testing, or testing continues, is all of these parcels have to be regularly tested to determine the efficacy of the treatment system, and also to provide data to the state. So that's what that is. Town water pending, that is a discussion we'll have in later slides, but but we have been working with the airport and the water department in trying to determine both a path and a size and location of the water line. We've been out there a couple times in the airport looking at habitat issues and layouts of the water line. And when we get to a follow-up slide, we will show what we've been doing to date. On the west side, those are to the west of the airport, beyond the Apron area, and this was the next area that we started to test. And as you can see, we've got some statistics here on the status of them. Thankfully, most on this side of the airport were non-detect, which is very beneficial to all of us. We do have some bottled water that we're providing. The state right now says that if anything is above non-detect, we're supposed to offer these people bottled water. So we are in the process of offering bottled water, and we have 9 that are on bottled water as of now. Okay, Katie, the next slide, please. So this is the latest, the new area. This was the area adjacent to airport gas. And these are the wells that we've identified to testing. We've done some testing. We have some pending. This is also the area where the new task order that the airport manager was just talking about additional homes. We've had some detects, so we had to reach out to the next adjacent parcels. In those discussions, we had a conversation with the water company and found out there are actually some homes that we originally initially identified as needing to be tested are actually on town water. So we will not be testing those homes if they're on town water because they don't have a well. So the next steps are to continue monitoring of all the affected parcels, continue the public outreach. Mr. Chairman, if I may, Noah, I assume the outreach has been going well.
I would agree with you.
Okay. We are continuing to work with the water company on providing town water, specifically regarding Nobodere Way. Some of those houses have a water main fairly close to those homes. So we have a call tomorrow with airport staff and the water company and legal counsel to understand if we can expedite in hooking water up to those homes. So we're going to try to see if we can expedite that and hopefully not have to install a POET system on those homes. So that's the game plan on Nobodere Way parcels. Any questions on the status report? Okay, Katie, next slide, please. So this is all the homes to the west and north of the airport, and the orange boxes around parcels that don't have any information in them are the next 22 homes. But you can see some of them have little blue water symbols in them. Those are the ones that we determined have town water on them, so they will not be tested. And then the rest of this, the color coding indicates the level of PFAS that's been determined in their well via the testing program. Okay, next slide. This is essentially the same thing. This just gives it's an update slide of everything to date, showing both the west and the south of everybody that has been tested to date, and the color coding represents, as I said, the level of PFAS, and the blue is the initial understanding of the migration of groundwater.
And Rich, I did a quick and dirty count of that, including the monitoring wells on the airport, and we're, I think, just above 50 or so. And
Okay.
there's a number yet to be done, so.
Yep. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so this here is the, oh, okay, it's going to take a while to generate. This here shows the airport. The light blue represents the existing water system at the airport. And then around the end of runway 6, there is a sort of a red line and a yellow line and a purple line. The purple line is the airport property boundary. And then when we get to Madigan Valley Road, I know it's a small drawing, but if you, Katie, can you enlarge the picture a little bit? And then focus in on Madigan Valley Road. So Madigan Valley Road, as I said, the purple is the property line, and then there's the yellow and the red. In our research of Madigan Valley Road, the red dashed line represents what would be a water line following the actual right-of-way or the street limits of Madigan Valley Road. However, the yellow represents where the actual traveled way is. So the traveled way, or where people place their cars, is not actually in the right-of-way of the public street. And then the purple represents the property line. So the road, the traveled way, or the road that people travel their cars on, actually meanders across private property, airport property, and land bank property. So some of the challenges that we will have to understand is, how do we put water line, what's the path of the water line of least resistance? There's a significant amount of priority habitat on the actual Madigan Valley Road and the area in red. And then the area in yellow, a lot of it some of it is on private property. Most of it is on the airport property. Presumably that would be okay with the airport to put the road and the water line there. The other parcels we have to continue investigating. When we put this map together, we use 3 independent sources of data. We use the airport property map, the airport layout plan, and the town GIS maps, and none of those sources matched, further challenging us in understanding the limits of where the road is and where the property lines are. But this is the area of study on where the water line will go. We've been out there a couple times to look at habitat. We've had some conversations with airport management about how to cross the airfield, either open cut or some kind of a directional drilling type of construction. And as we get further into that design, we will investigate these options and come up with the most cost-effective solution in getting the water to these homes. I will open it up to questions.
All right. First of all, I should have opened it up to questions from the commission first on the update without the water line. And I just want to check and make sure there aren't any questions. Excuse me, Ms. Planzer, did you have any on the update?
I don't remember. It was the first slide. I know I had something, but I can't remember. It was about the Nobadir, I think, area and the numbers. How many more are going to get tested, I guess? Right, because some were found that had the city water.
Correct. We originally, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
we originally were going to test another 22 homes. We've subsequently determined that there are maybe 7 or so that have town water, so they will not be tested.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Buscarin, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Topham?
I was wondering how some of the people who've already got the POET system, are they happier now than they were? I remember we had a few complaints or people unhappy with it.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Ms. Kamer, can you answer that question?
Please. Lisa?
Yep, just coming off mute. So we have a couple of situations that are resulting in some unknown sources of PFOS in the effluent of a couple of the systems. However, The systems themselves are, by and large, are operating like they should at the other locations. And we've only had really one complaint from one resident about the flow of the water at the outdoor shower was decreased, but no one else has complained of that. And then we have another situation where the resident thought the water might have tasted a little different, but we believe that might be due to the demineralization of the water. So we're taking out some of the naturally occurring metals in the water and basically making it a purified water. So overall, we haven't had any complaints about the systems, that are beyond that. And then
Haven't there been some concerns about how much space the systems take and things like that?
no, the systems, for the most part, they've been sort of out of sight, out of mind. We have one residence where we put them in a laundry room closet, and that hasn't worked out very well. So we're going to have to move that to a different location. But otherwise, they're in the crawl spaces so far, or in an outdoor shower that isn't in use. So they haven't complained about the locations.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Gasparo, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was hoping that we could spend a couple of minutes to focus on the Nobadir Way area and the couple of exceedances that we've already had. And then
Could
how,
Katie, could we go back to that slide, please?
and how we're going to handle sort of a two-track approach in terms of providing town water as well as the additional sampling. So is it possible to zoom in on that, up on that corner there? You can see that we have, we have two exceedances. We have 4 pending, or maybe it's 3 exceedances and 3 pending, and then the next set of testing, which already tells us that we're going to have to at least address those first 3. And the town water line is in Airport Road, but not in Nobadir Way. So I'm hoping that, and it wasn't clear to me from the amended scope of the contract that we're going to consider next, whether the design and understanding of a water main to trunk off of Airport Road is going to be included. And I'd like to be sure to see that we proceed with, not going towards poet systems there, but providing, I think the much more beneficial approach of municipal water. And I just want to be sure that's clear in this contract. Thank you.
Mr. Lassen?
Sure. So I will review the contract again, but I believe the water line contract did discuss putting a branch line down Nobadir Way, but I will verify that and provide an answer to that. Some of the other homes, I think it's tomorrow or Thursday, we have a meeting with Mark Willett from the water company to discuss with him if there's a water line down the street, does he need any assistance from us on getting a water line to these homes? Or is that something that he can just go out and do? And part of that is a discussion with legal counsel on access agreements and some other things. But yes, Mr. Gasparo, we are having those conversations now to understand what's needed to do to get water to these people as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I guess I heard you say that you're going to go back and look, but I'm just hoping that we can be sure that we wrap this up tonight to the extent possible in terms of that, I'm looking specifically sort of at that cluster of homes.
Yep.
And being sure that, we are proceeding with, and I appreciate that you're meeting tomorrow and things are happening fast, but I'd hate to see us also lose another month if in fact, we can be sure that that's covered tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, anybody, other commissioners have any other questions on the update? All right, let's move on back to the water line, new water line, proposed new water line then. Ms. Planzer, did you have any questions on the proposed new water line?
No, I don't.
Ms. Topham,
No,
Mr. Buscarin? Mr. Buscarin, did you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Comments? Can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm all set. Dan.
Okay, Mr. Gasparo?
My only question or comment is just to be sure that on the section of water line where we run along the airport property to the south of the south ramp, there were some homes there that had exceedances as well. And I just want to confirm that we would be, and the intention would be to also service those properties. You know, they have Montahanset addresses, but essentially the water line is going to run along their westerly property boundary, and presumably the connections could be made from there. But I don't want to make assumptions. I just want to be sure that that is in fact the intention. In other words, this water line is not solely to serve Madigan Valley. If it's passing along the few homes on Montahanset, that we also would tie into those, could provide water there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
So, yes, Mr. Gasparo, the line on this drawing was, the original water line need was to get to Madigan Valley Road. So should additional homes, as they've been found on Montahanset, a branch line, we've already talked to Mr. Willett at the Water Department, and a branch line would continue up Montahanset to capture any homes as necessary. And I have just reviewed our scope, and it does also talking about the intersection of Evergreen Way and Nobadir Way. So that is in here also.
All right, Mr. Gasparo?
Yeah, I guess I maybe I'm not clear, and it's hard when I can't, sort of point at the screen, but and I appreciate that absolutely addresses the concern. Just that there would be access to the homes. There was a few homes that already had exceedances that we've already tested near the property boundary, and that the intention was to connect those to this water line and not go with Poet Systems. That's the question that I have.
So
I identified those parcels from here.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the intent is to put everybody on water as soon as we can. I think part of the discussion we will have with the water department this week is how fast we can get the people on the water line. The challenge on this main part of the water line here on Madigan Valley Road is the right of way and the permitting issues. So perhaps we can look at designing and installing it in segments to speed up some of the people on the west of the property while we're still trying to resolve the permitting and right of way on the south side.
I would suggest that be one of the options you consider, Mr. Lasden, because the permitting, I don't know how long it'll take. That was my next question. How long would it take for there to be some answers about where to place it along Madigan Valley Road? But if it's going to be more than a few months difference, then I think we should probably do it in sections. One, to the west of the airport, leading up to where it crosses the runway, or thereabouts, and then the rest of it. Does that make sense?
It will, and we will have to continue looking into that, but that certainly makes sense. Yes.
When do you think we will have an answer on what the best way to go is on along Madigan Valley, whether we go in the traveled way or property line?
So we have, as part of our consultant team, we have a surveyor on our team to help us understand the property lines. And once we understand the actual layouts of the property lines, and we can start laying out some water line, and then we have to talk to the permitting agencies. But right now, we're a little preliminary to come up with some.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Yep.
can you give at least a seat of the pants time schedule?
So the permitting agencies, they're talking sort of in the 4 to 6 month timeframe
Mhm.
because of the.
Once we have
sensitivity.
something to submit to them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's probably at least a couple of months out, right?
Yes.
All right. Are there any other, at least we're making progress. That's good. And I appreciate that. And thank you all for your hard work on this. Are there any other questions or comments on this presentation from the commission? Hearing none. We have the two contracts before us. One for task order PN04 for $525,743 for the Nobodere Way study management and mitigation assistance. I assume that's all included in that. And then we have the second one for $268,303 for the water line extension design, permitting, and bid documents. And just to be clear again, the second one does include Nobodere Way to the extent it's involved. We're involved in that. Is that correct, Mr. Lassen?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on those contracts, Mr. Gasparo?
No,
Ms.
thank you.
Planzer?
Nope.
Ms. Topham?
I would ask that they do it as quickly as they can, because I know the people are really concerned about this. And I know that we have to do it all in a timely fashion as far as getting permits and all, but I think if we could speed it up would be great.
Point noted. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, to that point, I want to thank the consultants. If you notice, this work has all been done and we're now approving a contract
Right.
for them to do it, so.
We do appreciate that, and they've been great to work with on this. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve those two contracts with Mcfarland Johnson?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So you have your contracts now. As of when we get to sign them tomorrow, Mr. Lasden, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's any reason why you have to, oh, wait, we have to have public comment here. I'm sorry. Public questions. Could you turn on the YouTube channel, and viewers, please remember to refresh your browser. And we'll give a couple of minutes for people to weigh in if they have a question or comment on the PFAS presentation. Mr. Gaspar, are you monitoring this? Could you? Please?
I do have that open, yes.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go on to the lease abatement discussion? We'll keep it open for a couple of minutes to see if anybody wants to comment. And but we'll go ahead and talk about the lease payment abatement deferment discussion, Mr. Rafter.
Okay, I'm continuing discussions with the restaurant operator. We're reviewing potential alternatives of an abatement or deferment, most likely an abatement of some rent associated with the COVID pandemic. And we made a proposal to them, waiting their response. And I hopefully will have that to you by the next meeting. Can I go on to the next Financial?
Thank you. There are no other open matters with other tenants on that, are there?
No, not to my knowledge.
No, let's see. Has anybody appeared, Mr. Gasparo?
There is a public comment.
Okay, who is it, please?
So Nicole Gross has asked, when will homes be notified that are on the list to be tested?
Mr. Lassen, could you respond to that, please?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
When will homes be notified that are on the list to be tested? Follow up.
In other words, for the additional ones we've added to the list.
She is at 8 Evergreen Way, believes she's on the new map of homes to be tested, but have not been contacted.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kamer, can you answer that?
Certainly. Yeah, we just have figured out who will be in that step out group. So we're working on notifications now. You should receive a notification shortly on the timing for the next sampling event.
Within the next couple of days?
Yeah, that would be by the end of the week. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments, Mr. Gasparo?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you. Please close off the public comment. All right, Mr. Rafter, the fourth quarter report.
The end of year fourth quarter report will be presented to the select board tomorrow night. However, there are some items that have not been included in that report, and I'll be updating them tomorrow. Jamie's been working with the finance department to try to get some of these items put in, but I'll take you through where we stand right now. The revenues came in above budget but below last year. Expenses were below budget and below last year's expense, so that was good. So we ended up with a net earnings of about 2.166 million. Then we had a transfer from retained earnings of 400,000, which brought us up to 2.566 million. Some other ins and outs, and the net surplus was about 2,046,181. So all in all, even with a few months of a pandemic, we're showing a little bit of retained earnings. Now, the calculation here is our prior retained earnings were 3.5 million. We add the 2 million to it, and another 552,000 rather, that comes out for passenger facility charge. That indicates a projected balance or retained earning projection of over $5 million. However, in the box, and I don't know if you have it in your handout, but there are a number of things that were not included. It's in your hand. It's in the packet. I put a border around it. Jamie's put in red, note the summary below was included by the airport. This is not how the final will appear on the select board. So again, she concurs with the 3.5 million, 2,046,000 to 552,000. But there were previous retained earnings authorized at 2020 town meeting of 2.1 million.
I mean,
There's
expenses against retained earnings.
Yes, expenses. And then there's also still accounts payable and payroll of approximately 492,000. And we also still have to back out some other deductions from retained earnings that will be paying off some of the smaller capital items. So it's more like a $2 million retained earnings that we'll probably end up with as opposed to the 5 million. All in all, not terrible, but not great. I will say that between the pandemic and the PFAS, it is basically a perfect storm for a financial catastrophe almost. And we're managing this as closely and as tightly as we can. I can say that we're very thankful for the CARES Act funding, and that's going to help. But this PFAS is a major, major issue, and you will see as I go into the capital request items in just a few seconds here. Any questions before I go on to the manager's report, or
No, go ahead.
jumping
No,
right
are
in?
there any, I'm sorry, are there any questions? Ms. Topham, no. Mrs. Planzer, no. Mr. Buscarin,
No,
Mr. Gasparo,
No.
thank you.
So jumping right into it, we have a meeting with the Capcom this week, and
Excuse me, Mr. Rafter. I don't know that, if you want to stay, you're welcome to, Ms. Silcup and Ms. Kammer, but if you don't, and Ms. Nugent. But if you don't want to, you're welcome to excuse yourself if you have something better to do, which is likely. Thank you, though, for your participation. Mr. Lassen, you too.
so if you give me 1 second, Dan, I want to screen share something when I find it here. As I was saying, we have a meeting with the Capital Committee this week. It was a very, I'll say rushed, somewhat list of projects we had to put together. However, we did have our capital improvement meeting with the FAA and a pre-CIP meeting with them. That kind of drives a lot of this, and I will see if I can share my screen here. 1 second. I'm going to share the CIP, but I'm going to read from the capital request form. Can everybody see that? It's quite a busy document, and I will try to. Can you see that?
We're seeing, I think the Capcom item, not the CPI.
We're seeing the
It
narrative
went
below
underneath.
the spreadsheet.
It went underneath, I think, Tom.
Oh, stand by one. Wrong one.
It looks like it was all one document, but maybe not.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll read through our capital committee requests, and you will see them for the most part on the CIP. The CIP does have some other items in there that are not considered capital for the Capcom process, but we put on there so that FAA can see all of the work that's taking place at the airport. First, we have the permitting for airport master plan updates. That's $250,000. And we're hoping for 225 FAA 12.5 from MassDOT, 12.5 from us. And that is the permitting of the items that are in the EIR. There's something listed as an ALP update or airport geometry study. The FAA.
Where are you on this sheet? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm actually in the handout, but well, I
Okay.
can go down here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yep. Yeah, there you are.
We have permitting here. Airport geometry study is here. And that is, again, looking at non-standard geometry issues that exist on the airfield. We need to address those before we can continue with any other major projects. They allowed us to do ECHO, understanding that they didn't want to delay that project, but they do want these addressed and are requiring that. Next is the South Apron expansion, and that's a big chunk of money. We had our runway safety action team meeting today with various lines of the FAA, and it was made very clear that they consider this a very serious safety issue, both the South Apron and the taxiway Gulf, essentially moving some of that pavement to provide adequate separation between aircraft. So they want that put in 2022. They also indicated that 2022, there's a much better shot of trying to get some discretionary funding for that, as opposed to 23, 24, and 25. Apparently, a lot of discretionary is already spoken for in those years. So that's that project. Next, we have MEPA and NEPA for ALP update projects if needed. And that basically is associated with the non-standard geometry. If it comes out that we have to do certain things that require permitting, that's what that effort is going to be for. We then have a terminal area planning study, and that is to address some of the issues we're having in the terminal, from screening, capacity limitations, social distancing. Essentially, in my mind, it's kind of filling in that courtyard and expanding the screening queue area and things of that nature. We then have a very large project, and it's labeled as groundwater and soil investigation supplemental. That is for the PFAS. Now, let me see if I can find out where that one should be up.
No, it's on, isn't it on the other sheet?
It's on our Capcom one, but there should be one somewhere in here too. This may have spread it out. Yeah, you have the 963 up top here. That's the ongoing PFAS.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Tom, it's 2021, number 6.
There it is, right, yep. Thank you, Rich. And that's only showing 2.5. The Capcom request we have is for 6.7 million. And that is to address essentially existing FY22 and FY23 work that we're projecting. Now, I want to clarify what this means though. We have an appropriation of $500,000. We have I believe Brian has the authorization from Department of Revenue, or whatever the appropriate department is, to expend beyond appropriation an additional 3.5 million. However, we still have to go through the process and the approvals and justification to identify what that's going to be used on, and that's why we're going to the Capcom. So it's the 500 plus the 3.5 plus another couple million for all work going out to identifying the plume, continuing some monitoring. It's going out about 3 years. And again, this is one of those things that we have to put in kind of front loaded because of the fact that if we don't and we wait to town meeting, we may not have the money again. So that's why we're up at the 6.7. I just want to make sure that everyone understands there are things like the water line. Just because this is in 2022 doesn't mean we're going to wait for that for the water line. We have that emergency authorization, and that's what the water line would be covered under to be done in this year. Next, we have paint and beads, rubber markings. You may recall that's an annual item for $63,000. That's because the state in past years have done that, but they are unable to. We have a replacement of a diesel Z-Track that's for cutting the small areas and around the runway and taxiway lights and all the tie-down areas. We're replacing that's $20,000 for the Z-Track. Replacing a dump truck that is 26 years old for $232,000. Replacing all ARF turnout gear with the PFAS-free gear once that's NFPA approved, and that's for $66,000. And replacing one of the 2 buses that are used in operations for $88,000. The Z-Track, the dump truck, and turnout gear will most likely, we will put in for ASMP grants as well to the state. So all total, we're looking at for FY '22 for the Capcom, $23.8 million. And 16.6 of that is AIP projects. So the big chunk is the PFAS at $6.7 million. All total, the airport would be in for $8,076,000 of the entire, of the 23.8 million. Now, I'm sure there's questions, so I'll be glad to try to address those.
Of which 6 million, of the 8 million, whatever, 6,000,007 is the PFAS.
It's PFAS, correct. Any questions before I move on, or?
I have a few.
Okay.
So this is our first time seeing this, and I'm wondering, are we expected to adopt this at the next meeting, or this is a draft that we can make some adjustments?
Yeah, this, in all honesty, Mr. Gasparo, Brian called Friday, you know, hammering us, where is this, where is this? They gave us a week to put this together. And each one of these projects has probably about anywhere from 10 to 20 pages of detail associated with it. From pictures to justifications to engineers' estimates to you name it, to what years and how the breakdown is going to go in the cash flow. So I apologize that it's last minute. I just wanted to make you aware this is what we're going to be presenting to Capcom. And I will explain to them that you just got to see this today. So yes, we would like at the next meeting, you know, we'll get feedback from Capcom, provided to you at the next meeting, and then ask if you would endorse these.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I think, you know, most of the things on here and most of the projects are pretty straightforward, but and I appreciate the amount of effort and time that's gone in towards the PFAS and the water line and getting all of that wrapped in here. I do think that I would like to see some time spent on the South Apron expansion. You know, we've been discussing that obviously for a lot of time since the master planning process, but this is really, I think, where the rubber meets the road. It had always been sort of out years and now being advanced. And there's a few things I don't see in here. I don't see any funds for any kind of mitigation associated with that. While we've talked about a study, you know, for a berm or a wall, there's, you know, and whether, even if that wouldn't be paid for, which has always been the discussion, I would hope that we would have some allowance for something in here, you know, to address that expansion, right? I'm looking at the line item right there.
Yeah.
And, you know, so the airport's at 762.5 for our contribution. But again, I just think that and I also don't see anything about any capital potentially related to ground power units or preconditioned air. The discussions we've had at the environmental subcommittee essentially is that, you know, the units that we have are insufficient for the aircraft that are here now. And, you know, if we're going to do a ramp expansion, I'm hoping as part of a capital planning process, we'd also be looking to include the equipment to hopefully provide, you know, some level of mitigation for that.
So if I may, my understanding is that the berm and that type of things were in, if you will, the overall cost for the South Apron. Rich, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe that was an all-in cost. And the GPU, I'm pretty sure we had one in last year's, and we're going to be acquiring a new GPU. But I do hear what you're saying about, you know, adding to those things. So.
And we never saw any kind of, I think, as part of the environmental, what was going forward, the lighting study and how I just think that we have to be, I'm not trying to say we don't need the project, but I also think that it's very much being put forward now as eliminated parking on runway 15 on 33 on whatever the handful of days a year. At the same time, that's an operational decision, and we don't have to do that either. And we would be, full for parking, obviously, on those few days. So
There's a catch-22 there, and this was a debate between the airports division and the regional administrator of whether or not an airport can turn aircraft away. We can't simply hang up a sign and say we're closed. We have to provide access, and that's the catch-22. And the airport said, okay, but you can't do it this way. So as the one FAA airports representative said, we want to try to get Nantucket to where runways are used for runways, taxiways are used for taxiways, and aprons are used for aprons. So I think what we should keep in mind or consider is that the design process is going to be critical to address everything you just said, from the lighting to the berm to now the other equipment we're going to have to look at, the GPU purchases and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to get at that sort of the discussions we've been having for years would be, when this went forward, we would try to work on some procedures and, understanding there's that aspect of it. There's an aspect of needing some equipment. Will there be additional manpower? How are we going for honestly a ramp that, what is the utilization factor going to be? There are the, those days that you absolutely need it. And I agree that we can't turn anybody away, but you also don't have to provide parking for every aircraft. And so, how many days a year? Again, I just think that in terms of a project this big, a $15 million ramp expansion, that the community too, should be aware of, and, potential impacts and what we're doing to be, good neighbors, I think, as the airport is part of such an expansion.
Yeah. So the FAA's discussion too on that was, they likened it to a state fair where it's only there for a short period of time, but you have to have it designed properly. And trust me, I get it. The latest drawing, and I can't pull it up, but it's in the EA. It's showing that the aircraft essentially are nosed in and would have to be required to be pushed back anyway. There's not enough room for them to taxi out, so they would be pushed back out of their position.
Thank you.
Mr. Laston, can you confirm that the estimate for the $15 million includes a berm or some provision for a berm?
Yes, we have quite a large contingency factor in our number. To sort of expand the conversation a little bit with Mr. Gasparo's question regarding mitigation, we don't have the environmental documents back. Yes, we know we've been talking about some things, but we don't have the final environmental review or the permitting done to get a final answer on what's going to be required. So when we build these estimates, we put contingency factors in to handle these costs. As best as we can understand what we suspect will be required.
I appreciate that, but I also would say that in certain cases, such as this, everything we've discussed from an environmental perspective is that there may not actually be a requirement for, that type of mitigation. And so are we going to possibly do that as a good neighbor to be sure that, involuntary, and then there may have to be some assumption of the cost. And so that's where I guess I'm coming at.
We'll know better when the planning goes a little further forward.
Understood. I just want to be sure we had some discussion on it, because I think it's a project that is going to be, there's going to be a fair amount of community discussion, I think, once it's really understood, what's going on there.
Rich, I think where Arthur's going to is we have to look at our airport share on that because of what may not be eligible.
Yes.
So we have to take a look into that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Topham, did you have any comments or questions?
No.
Mr. Buscarin?
No comments. Thank you.
Ms. Planzer?
I do not.
Thank you. All right, well, more to come on this and at the next meeting. I think it would be helpful, perhaps, Mr. Gasparo, if you could just create a short list of the sort of main items that are your items of concern. So we have it on the record. And I know it's been discussed, these have been discussed at the environmental subcommittee, but I think it'd be a good thing to have it summarized.
And Arthur, if I may, that, so you're aware where I think that would come in is in the scoping process for the design. We need to make sure all of that's included in the scoping meeting and the scoping of that project.
That works.
Okay, thank you.
So
I should point out that David Mackey of Anderson and Krieger, the airport's counsel, has just joined the meeting. He's probably going to be quiet until we get to the executive session, but he's welcome to chime in if he wants to.
okay.
Mr. Rafter, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I'll continue with ongoing projects. The security
Yes.
project, phase one. We had a bit of an issue. There were 2 TSA tests performed. We passed the one, we failed the second, which involved a breach of an emergency door. I don't want to get into too much detail there, but the situation was rectified almost immediately with the contractor. And TSA is satisfied with that resolution. Phase 2 contracts, we're awaiting MassDOT's approval, and typically we would proceed with the understanding that that is en route, but because of the large funding amount that's involved, I've asked to hold off on notice to proceed until we get the state's authorization on that. And hopefully that work will begin in October. Looking to schedule a pre-construction meeting shortly. The EAEIS updated, the draft is now going to be submitted in October and expect the final in 2021, January, I'm sorry. Fuel farm, filed sub bids are due on September 24th. General contracting bids are due on October 1st for consideration at your next commission meeting. Taxiway Echo, we held a pre-construction meeting on September 2nd. Lawrence Lynch will begin storing materials very shortly on airport. The gate has been installed along Monahans Road at the south end of the apron. We've identified the laydown area, looking into potential other locations for transplanting some plants that have to be moved. The PFAS testing, I believe, is going to be accomplished Friday. Weston is doing that in the soils, and full-blown construction to begin on September 14th. The drainage plan fieldwork has been completed, and we anticipate a report shortly. We have a draft scope for the ALP geometry issues that you saw earlier, but we have to add some items, and we're going to be setting up a scoping meeting with FAA to go over that. The water main, you heard previously the status of that, and as I mentioned, town council is reviewing the agreement that was developed by Anderson and Krieger. On the RFP bid status, the request for expression of interest for hangar development, legal has developed a draft lease. We're going to be reviewing that, so there's still interest, and that's good. As I mentioned, the IFB for fuel farm went out September 3rd. Poet supply installation, as Ms. Kammer mentioned earlier, we had a discussion today, and Brian Turbot was very helpful in cutting to the chase and getting us to where we need to be to get those accomplished. Working on an RFP for some additional land in Bunker Road. We have some interest out there, so we're going to be doing a survey and appraisal. And we met with the Plus department last week on the GIS resolution, and we also have to develop an RFP. Plus was very helpful in not just this parcel, but in providing us a number of drawings and documents associated with our MCD in the Bunker Road area. The car rental agreements are set to expire at the end of this year, and we're looking at developing an RFP for these services. On the operations side of the house, fuel sales for August were down 27%, or $865,432. very significant, but luckily some expense associated with that, pardon me, associated with that should go down as well. You can tell I'm choking on my words when we lose that much money. Dan, you had asked about the percentage or what commercial service made up of that. In July, they were 13% of the total jet gallons sold, and in August, they were 14%. Labor Day weekend.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rafter, that's this year?
That's this year, yes.
What about last year?
I didn't take a look at that. I apologize.
Okay,
I would say it's probably slightly higher, but not much.
okay.
NetJets is one of the biggest, provides some of the biggest uplift. They're about 15% themselves. Labor Day weekend, not including today, sales were down $282,000 or 44%. So we are still getting the hit from the pandemic. I mentioned the runway safety action team earlier. We discussed not only the upcoming projects, but we looked at the past year and some events that had taken place and ways to improve safety. Work closely with the tower on a lot of things there. We're working with legal, Mr. Mackey's group, on a response to the Part 13 complaint filed by Mr. Walsh, as well as the Hertz bankruptcy. And Southern Airways started new service to New Bedford on September 3rd. We had representatives from New Bedford Chamber of Commerce, their town council, and Nantucket business representatives. They flew into Nantucket. Our local contingent took them on a tour, and they were meeting about ways to promote that New Bedford service. Any questions before I move on to statistics? So this is a pretty bleak picture again. For July, operations were down 44.3% over last July. Employments were down 66% roughly. Cape Air saw a 61% decrease in employments. United was down 90%. Delta down 46%. JetBlue down 85%. Nantucket Air was up 1% or 12 passengers. Tradewinds was down 21%. American was down 27%. And Southern Airways saw a 150% increase or 170 passengers. In the Washington national market, American was down 34% and JetBlue was down 21%. Overall, DCA was down 31% or 1,325 passengers. Boston market, Cape Air had a 64% decrease. JetBlue a 79% decrease. Overall, Boston down 71% or 5,375 passengers. New Bedford traffic down 64%. Washington Dulles. United flew this route this year as opposed to Newark last year, and they carried 346 passengers with a 28% load factor. Cape Air's White Plain employments were down 63%. The Hyannis market for July, Cape Air was down 21%. AC Air, as I said, up 1%. Southern began this route and carried 96 passengers, and overall in Hyannis, the Hyannis market was actually up in July, 11% or 105 passengers. JFK, JetBlue down 82%, 5,419 passengers. Cape Air carried 106. Overall market down 81% or over 5,300 passengers. LaGuardia, American down 55%, Delta down 46. Overall market down 52% or 1,300 passengers. Charlotte service on American was down 10% or 24 passengers. Vineyard traffic was down 59%. Providence, Southern saw a 38% increase or 17 passengers. Norwood service was up 191% or 82 passengers. The jet fuel sold in July was down 14.2%. For August, it was down 19.6%. Avgas was down 34.5% for July, and August was down 30.6%. Good news, freight was up 8.3% over last July. Noise complaints, we received 12 from 6 residents this June, as opposed to 9 last June. That's the bleak story of our statistics, unfortunately, right now. On the personnel front, we had 2 resignations. One was the FBO supervisor. The other was a customer service representative in the FBO, and we're working through the process of replacing those. And just a note for the commission, you had previously approved the travel request to go to the National Airports Conference in Savannah, Georgia, and thankfully that has been converted to an all virtual conference. And that concludes my report. Questions?
Chairman, you're muted.
I said, thank you. And Ms. Topham, do you have any questions for Mr. Rafter?
No,
Ms. Planzer,
No, I don't.
Mr. Buscarin,
No, thank you.
Mr. Gasparo?
No, thanks.
All right, before we start with the commissioner's comments, I would ask that the YouTube chat channel be enabled so there can be public comment if anybody chooses. And remember to refresh your browser, in which YouTube is showing, and then we'll get to public comment after commissioner's comments. Ms. Topham, do you have any comments?
no, sir.
Ms. Planzer,
No, I don't.
Mr. Buscarin,
No comments.
Mr. Gasparo?
No comments.
Only thing I would like to say is that I think this has been an extraordinary 6 months for the airport, and particularly for the airport staff, with a great many additional things added to a very busy platter already. And I just want to say personally that I think that the staff has done a really good job in rising to the occasion, dealing with these issues. I know it hasn't been easy, but I would like to offer my commendation to them for their work.
Thank you. We have a great team and everybody pulls together, Dan. It's pretty impressive to see.
Well, it's pretty remarkable. Thank you.
And I agree with your comments, Mr. Drake.
Thank you. Are there any public comments, Mr. Gasparo?
No, not yet. And I had one other, I did have a comment, which was, it was mentioned earlier that there was a recent, I believe today, PFAS update provided to DEP. So will that be put on our website?
That will be posted, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may. That will be posted by tomorrow on the website.
Thank you very much. No comments on YouTube.
All right. Let's close off the chat feature on YouTube then, and I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to return to public session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to review the executive session minutes of the dates enumerated on the agenda for possible release, and the minutes of July 16th and August 11th for review and possible release. Also, under Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding the Gatto claim, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Under Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Under Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pursuing claims against the manufacturer of polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, where the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. And under Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential legal claims against the airport for with respect to PFAS substances, where the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Topham.
I'll
Second.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you, Rich, for your participation.
Thank you.
As always, it's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich. Dan, just for the other commissioners, I've asked that Noah participate in the executive session.
Before you guys start, so Dee, if you want to make me the host,
That's fine. Yes, thank you, the host, please.
then you can go. Thanks for your time.
She's on mute.